Good afternoon. Welcome to the Heritage Foundation and our Lewis Lehrman Auditorium. We, of course, welcome those who join us on all of these occasions on our heritage.org website. I would ask everyone here in-house if you'll make that last courtesy check that your cell phones have been turned off. It is always appreciated, especially by the speakers. Thank you, Terry. We will post the program within 24 hours on the Heritage homepage for everyone's future reference. Our internet viewers are always welcome to send questions or comments at any time, simply emailing us at speaker@heritage.org. Introducing our program today is Becky Norton Dunlop, Vice President for External Relations here at the Heritage Foundation. Mrs. Dunlop oversees Heritage's strategic outreach and communications, both nationally and internationally, to conservative public policy organizations, other leadership groups, and policy activists. Prior to joining Heritage in 1998, she served as Secretary of Natural Resources in the cabinet of Governor George Allen of Virginia. Before that, she served in several significant roles in the Reagan administration, including Deputy Assistant to the President for Presidential Personnel, Special Assistant to the President and Director of his Cabinet Office, Senior Special Assistant to Attorney General Ed Meese, and then Deputy Undersecretary of the Department of Interior and Assistant Secretary for Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. She currently serves as a board member for numerous public policy organizations and associations dedicated to advancing conservative public policy principles. Please join me in welcoming Becky Norton Dunlop. Becky?
Thank you so much, John, and let me add my words of welcome to all of you in the audience and to our distinguished panel. We're delighted to have you here at the Heritage Foundation today. Well, the title of our program today is Pain and Promise for Women in the Middle East and North Africa. And as I have talked with people about this program, they have said, well, why are you limiting the topic to women? And my answer is, well, we're actually not. But we are trying to focus attention on an aspect of the challenges in the Middle East that we think does not get enough attention here in the United States of America and around the world. So it's a good topic, it's an important topic, and I think everyone here, both in person today and watching us, will actually leave this event feeling like you actually have learned something that you're not getting in the media, in the mainstream media. I think it will make you a more dedicated representative of advocates for liberty for all around the world. Now let me quickly say that I've known about SAT-7 myself for, well, double-digit years, let's say, and find myself regularly reading their materials and being constantly impressed with the innovation, the commitment, and dare I say heroism of the people who are involved in this program. It's impressive to learn about all that they do. You'll learn some of it today, but not nearly all of it. They have been active in the Middle Eastern part of the world, making a difference, a real difference for people who are searching and needing hope. I'm going to introduce the founder and CEO of SAT-7 and turn the program over to him, and he's got some very distinguished ladies with him today who will be presenting for us. We know that there are great frustrations in the Middle East, certainly since the Arab Spring. Democracy and its promise of new freedoms and economic reform have not materialized. There are many fault lines, probably more emerging each day than we know about. There are struggles with ethnic and religious minorities. We certainly know that the rights of Arab women and children is challenged constantly. Well, is there hope there? Our panel today, I think, will tell you that there is, and it's very exciting. Dr. Terry Ascott, has lived in the Middle East and served as the leader for indigenous media ministries for more than 30 years. In 1973, Terry moved to Beirut, Lebanon, and worked to launch an Arabic Christian publishing ministry. After the start of the Lebanese Civil War, Terry and his family evacuated to Egypt. history has a way of repeating itself. In Egypt, Terry launched an Arabic youth magazine called Magala, which means magazine in Arabic. This was the first Christian magazine to be successfully distributed in Egyptian newsstands. Magala was published for 20 years and, according to many Arab Christians, was instrumental in bringing many people to new faith. While working on the magazine, Terry's ministry became involved in other media projects, including video production. In 1995, he, along with Middle Eastern Christian leaders and around 20 partner organizations working in that region, launched Sat7, the first Arabic Christian satellite television channel. The channel was a pioneer in many areas, breaking ground for other ministries to follow. In the years since its launch, Sat7 has grown from a 2-hour-a-week broadcast to a network of 4 24-hour channels: Sat7 Arabic and Sat7 Plus, Sat7 Kids, and Sat7 Pars, or Persian, a 24-hour channel in Farsi Persian, and 4 hours in Turkish, Sat7 Turk. Sat7 has more than 150 employees, mostly Middle Eastern nationals, who work in its offices and studios in Egypt, Lebanon, Cyprus, Turkey, and the UK. Terry himself holds a first-class BS, Bachelor of Science, in Civil Engineering with honors from Middlesex University. In December 2011, he was awarded the Honorary Doctor of Christian Ministries degree from Belhaven University for extraordinary work and achievements in promoting Christianity throughout the Middle East and North Africa. This means he has been promoting true freedom and liberty throughout that part of the world. Terry and his wife Jacqueline live in Cyprus and have 3 grown children and 1 grandchild. Please welcome to the Heritage Podium, Dr. Terry Ascott.
Thank you very much, Becky, and for that generous introduction, and also to the Heritage Foundation for your hospitality today. What we're going to do is, I will initially paint the big context, the background perhaps to some of the challenges in the Middle East. We'll look at a few Middle East countries too, and then I'm going to hand over to Rita Almanaya, who's the director for our 3 Arabic language channels. And we also have with us Samia, who is a TV producer. She's Tunisian but lives in Algeria, so she brings a North African perspective. And Rita, of course, responsible for all the different countries in which we make and broadcast to, make programs and broadcast to, but she's from Lebanon. And hopefully there'll be some time left for some questions if we don't ramble on too much, and I hope that will give you a chance to ask the kind of questions that we may not have touched properly. I'm going to look at the Arab uprisings. Of course, it's an incredibly fluid situation across the Middle East and North Africa. We're all aware of the so-called Arab Spring, which some have dubbed the Christian Winter. It certainly has brought more pain than joy to most people, and it's still a very long way from being finished. Now, just to explain it in simple terms, we put up this idiot guide. Now, I'm not going to spend time on this, but it is actually quite a good chart. It was developed by an Egyptian. It does explain some of the ambiguities and the complexities of the relationships that exist across the region. But a bit of background to what's going on. I don't know if any of you have been following these UNDP, United Nations Development Programme reports on Arab human development. The first one was published in 2003, and they continue to publish through 2009 different analysis perspectives on the Arab world. But we're talking hundreds of pages. Very simply, they did cite causes of backwardness, this is their word, in the Arab world as being, number one, a lack of human and civil rights, where it's kind of a no-brainer. But perhaps more interestingly and more relevant to this afternoon is the lack of women's empowerment and rights. And of course, we'll hear more about that. And then also a lack of a good education and free access to uncensored information. And these things in turn have contributed to other frustrations before the Arab uprising. The abuse of power that's so ubiquitous, the disappearances of people, the bribery and corruption, and it was that which really triggered Mohammed Bouazizi to set fire to himself, which was kind of the flashpoint for the Arab Spring there in Tunisia. The lack of employment opportunities, and of course if you don't have a job, you don't have self-respect, you don't have income, you can't afford an apartment, therefore you can't get married, and so again it reinforces this lack of self-respect and dignity. Employment is such a key issue, and it's so rampant across the Arab world. And if it's not unemployment, it's misemployment. University graduates driving taxis. And of course urbanization, massive urbanization over the last 20 years, emigration for employment or temporary work overseas, even or especially in other Arab countries, leading to breakdowns in traditional family and social structures and values, behavior changes. A lack of social services, irregular electricity, water, poor sanitation. You've often got overflows of sewage in the streets, very poor government-provided medical services, very poor public education, virtually no pensions. And so this kind of led to what we call today, in retrospect, the Arab Spring, and it began, as I mentioned, with the self-immolation of Mohammed Bouazizi, a vegetable seller in Tunisia, and that unrest spread across the region, with a few exceptions. We haven't seen any major shifts in countries like, for example, Algeria, but there's special reasons for that. The responses by Arab governments were initially very inconsistent, but they now fall into these two general categories: making political cessions, trying to improve the lot of the masses through food subsidies, raising public sector salaries and so on, like has been done in Saudi and Oman, or brutally suppress the opposition, as has happened in Libya, Syria, and occasionally, inconsistently, in Bahrain. If we look at a few countries, Libya has been out of the news recently, but despite the fact that Gaddafi was killed, overthrown, elections were then held last year for the first time in 50 years, free elections. The new government actually has been unable to integrate these different ethnic and tribal rivalries, and so there's a lot of anarchy in the country. There are also concerns over missing weapons, especially surface-to-air missiles, literally thousands missing. Chemical and other weapons are insecure and turning up in other conflict zones. And the insecurity in the south was what allowed the Tuareg, who had been sympathetic and fighting alongside of Gaddafi's forces, and al-Qaeda elements, Islamists, to take control of northern Mali last year. So despite its wealth, Libya may yet become a failed state. There's a lot of work to be done there before the country can be sort of brought together. Egypt, of course, has been in the news a lot, and last month was actually the worst year for Christians and Christian churches in terms of destruction and attacks for over 700 years, with the loss of 80 churches and institutes, Christian-owned institutions. Yes, we had parliamentary elections after the revolution in January 2011. In November, we had the Muslim Brotherhood's Freedom and Justice Party got an amazing 47% of parliamentary seats, and the more extreme Salafists, Al Noor Party, got another 24% of seats. No women got a seat. That's interesting, although 5 were appointed to the parliament, which has since been dissolved. There were presidential elections, and you heard of the Muslim Brotherhood candidate, Mohammed Morsi. The Muslim Brotherhood said initially they were not going to run a presidential candidate, but they did. After his appointment, just over a year ago, he appointed incompetent loyalists to key government positions and gave himself, by the end of the year, new powers, forced through a new pro-Islamic constitution. And all this resulted, together with kind of economic gloom and doom in the country, in a huge backlash. On the 30th of June, perhaps 33 million people out of a total population of just over 80 million came out on the street. And of course we saw these, eventually most of the Muslim Brotherhood leaders were arrested and accused of inciting violence or actually committing violence. And just a few days ago, the Muslim Brotherhood as a party was outlawed. The new Coptic Pope, Tadros, was chosen after the death of Pope Shenouda, who ruled for 40 years the Coptic Orthodox community, the largest Christian community in the whole Middle East. The new Pope has had to address high levels of pessimism among Egyptian Christians. And of course, the last few weeks have not helped the optimism, although it's been very exciting to see the way in which the church across Egypt has responded to the recent violence. I think perhaps the most impressive thing about it was the way the Christians did not react, but sort of turned the other cheek. And that was something many Muslims were impressed by, because this could have really escalated, and that's of course what the Muslim Brotherhood wanted to do. Syria is another country we just need to talk about a little bit. I know some of you probably know a great deal about this, and it's obviously been in the news a lot in the last month because of the chemical weapons attack. But with 100,000 dead and 4 to 5 million internally displaced people and 2 million refugees, half of whom are children, 1 in 3 homes and businesses totally or partially destroyed. This is a tragedy on a massive scale. This is the biggest refugee problem we've had this century, and certainly perhaps since the Afghan war back in the 70s and 80s. Christians and other minorities have been attacked by both the opposition forces and the Syrian government, and there's a huge fear of an Iraqi-type post-dictatorship instability if the government fails. The National Coalition of Syrian oppositions groups is obviously very divided, and you've got these extremist Al-Qaeda affiliated groups like the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria and the Al-Nusra Brigade. But the truth is, and this has been said repeatedly by people trying to mediate in this situation, there is no military solution. There has to be a political solution. But what happens in Syria is having and will have significant implications for Iraq, for Lebanon, for Turkey, and I don't mean just refugees. The political significance of what happens, the instability in Syria is going to impact all of these areas. And of course, Syria has been a supporter of Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas. It's got implications for Israel, of course, and for the Christians and for the other minorities in the country. It's an extremely dangerous situation, Syria. If it comes unglued and there's chaos in the country, it's going to suck in a lot of other countries into this conflict, and it could escalate very quickly. I won't talk much about other countries, but Saudi Arabia continues to throw money at the problem, trying to buy off its somewhat yes, thank you, population. Women have been promised they can vote in the next municipal elections, which were in 2015 already, and that's really exciting, isn't it? And there have been demonstrations in the last 10 days about kind of to get women the right to drive. This is pathetic, I know, but it's the reality of the situation there. If there is regime change in Saudi, this could trigger further international interventions. Obviously, America's got a vested interest in the oil supply being stable. They've already got troops in the oil field areas. But of course, it can also be an excuse for Iran to get involved on behalf of the Shia minorities in the country. I won't take time to talk about Yemen, but it's an unfinished story. Again, there's Al-Qaeda operatives in the country that operate, it seems, with impunity in certain areas. Bahrain is another story of confusion and chaos, and is still trying to get its act together. Morocco is important because King Mohammed IV, that looks like the sixth, set the tone for the other Arab royalty by kind of moving the country towards a constitutional monarchy, that is, allowing a parliament, elections, respecting the elections in so much as he no longer unilaterally appoints the prime minister and so on. But still, there are demonstrations each week, mostly concerned with economic problems, and the chant is, you know, no jobs, no dignity, we want employment. As in Oman and Jordan, the king is generally liked and respected, and gradual change is possible as long as there's continuous progress and promises are kept. But there remains a continued harassment of the press and Christian ministries and certain other minorities. Sudan's a huge story in itself. I'm not going to go there, but it's an interesting, perhaps, precedent for how to solve a problem of ethnic groups in a country, to divide the country. Sudan, which was Africa's biggest country, is of course now two countries, Sudan and South Sudan. Iran, exciting promises of change there the last few days. It struggled with popular discontent since the elections in June of 2009, when there was a violent put-down of demonstrations by the regime. But the very recent election of Hassan Rouhani as the new president gives hope for some reforms. Some political prisoners have been released in the last few weeks. New initiatives on the nuclear issue have been made. There's a declared openness to re-engage with the great Satan here, and we hope to see some new freedoms of access. Certainly the government officials are using Facebook on a regular basis, but the population in general is ring-fenced with a special firewall they have on the internet in the country. 2011 and 12 were certainly very bad years for the church under Ahmadinejad, and Christians were harassed, imprisoned. We're hoping this will begin to change. And we could talk about Jordan, still quite unstable. They keep reshuffling the government, trying to please people to show that they're trying to make progress. Algeria, there's been no change. It's a military dictatorship. It's unlikely to make concessions. People have seen the ugly face of an Islamic uprising in the 90s when over 120, 150,000 people were killed in this conflict between the fundamentalists and the government. They don't want to go back to that. Tunisia held model elections, and the fairly moderate Al-Nahda party got 40% of the vote, is leading the country, but Islamists are spoilers in this political environment. There have been assassinations of moderates. There's a lot of economic problems still plaguing the country. I just want to go on and talk, and this is to set the scene for women's issues a bit, the context of democracy in the Arab context. Democracy, of course, is much more than multi-party elections and the right to vote. To work, democracy also needs an educated and an informed electorate. It needs a free and fair press to inform the electorate. It needs a strong and independent judiciary to protect the free press, and the ability to maintain law and order, good security to protect your electorate, your candidates, your independent judiciary, and so on. But even then, if you have all these institutes, and they don't exist in most Middle Eastern countries, by sheer strength of numbers, Islamists can get elected and introduce theocracy, or a tyranny of the majority over the minority, as happened in Egypt. The Islamists got elected into power, and what did they do? They began to dismantle democracy and create a theocracy. And this slogan that many Islamists have been quoted as using this is democracy. One man, one vote, one time. That's it. So for democracy to survive, it must include a strong social commitment to liberty, to freedom of expression and belief, and equality for all before the law, including women and religious minorities. But look at these prevailing attitudes. This is a Pew survey that was conducted just weeks before the Arab Spring started at the end of 2010. These are the people that would support harsh punishment. This survey was conducted only among the Muslim population of these different countries. So look at Egypt. 80% of people would support, this is before the Arab Spring started, before they had a taste of the Muslim Brotherhood, the stoning of people who commit adultery. More than 80% would support the death penalty for those that become apostates or leave Islam. You compare that to Turkey at the bottom, where we have also an Islamic party, the AK party in power, but the attitudes of individuals in society is very different. And the question is then, how can there be freedom of expression or equality for all when the majority are ready to give the death penalty to a convert? It's rather frightening. And finally, the acid test of democracy. Are elected leaders ready to lose power? Unlike Turkey, and with the exception of Lebanon, there are no Arab leaders that have so far left office except by force, as we saw in Egypt, or in a coffin. And this is not democracy. Now, what is the opportunity of the gospel or Christian truth in this theatre? Christian media offers the church an opportunity to speak into the situation, to share the gospel, of course, at a time when people are open to new kinds of ideas, they face challenge and change, to be a voice for hope, forgiveness, and reconciliation. Now, we use those words kind of a cliche, but they are incredibly important in this kind of conflict. We've seen truth and reconciliation initiatives in South Africa and so on, but we have not in the Middle East. And it was the late King Hussein of Jordan that said, the Christians are vital to the Middle East. They're the glue that hold things together. And it's because of their ability to bring this message of forgiveness and reconciliation into the situation. We should be standing up for truth, the weak, the oppressed, to defend human rights, not just Christian rights, helping ensure equality before the law for women, those from different ethnic minorities, non-Sunni Muslim minorities in Sunni majority countries. We need to call for religious freedom, including the right to choose your religion, which has not yet been defended by any of the candidates in Egypt, for example, in recent elections. And to help shape future constitutions and institutions of democratic government. This Egyptian constitution, for example, has been the subject of manipulation and struggles between different groups. And the Christians were initially invited to be a part of that discussion, but they were soon marginalized. Hopefully, the new constitution will be different. And the media can also address some of these UNDP-defined root causes of the current problems, especially a lack of good education and access to information. We've got a lot of programming that talks about empowerment of women, human rights, and so on. And why is all this important here in the Western world? Because the Arab world is the strong man in the house of Islam. I'm not going to dwell on that, but if there are failed states in the Arab world, the consequences for the rest of the world include rising oil prices, crashing some already very fragile Western economies, a new flood of refugees into southern Europe, new safe havens for terrorist groups. These areas of anarchy that we saw in southern Libya and we still see in Yemen, they can expand. We see this also in parts of Syria today. And if we believe the Christian gospel has the power to change lives, change societies and cultures, then there's never been a more important time or place to invest in the furtherance of the gospel than the Middle East and North Africa today. 99% of this region, at least, have a TV set. It doesn't matter how poor you are, you have to get it, because once you have it, It's an endless source of free information and entertainment, a distraction from the grinding poverty around you, and so on. But up until the 90s, television was censored. With the advent of satellite television that provides people in the region with uncensored information and entertainment, the growth of dishes was phenomenal. Today, at least 70% of the region has got satellite television at home. And the more closed and difficult the country, Saudi Arabia, for example, the more dishes there are. The first thing people bought in Iraq after the fall of Saddam Hussein were satellite dishes, because it is the only source of uncensored information and entertainment. Yes, the internet is growing, but half the people in the Middle East will never be literate enough to navigate it. The internet is censored in certain countries. Certainly many websites are blocked by governments. Even in more liberal countries like Turkey, certain sites are blocked. So satellite television continues to provide really the only source of uncensored information for many. Sat7 today is broadcasting on 2 satellite systems. The European Hotbird, we broadcast in Farsi, Turkish and Arabic, and we also have been, for the last few years, with some thanks to the Heritage Foundation in putting some pressure through the State Department, on the Egyptian-owned Nilesat system, where we broadcast a full-time Arabic channel and one 24-hour-a-day channel for children, which of course is watched by mothers as well. The kids channel is perhaps our most important. 1/3 of the Arab world is under 16 years of age, and impacting them with new attitudes on human rights issues is perhaps the only hope for the future. And the viewership we have for this channel is quite astonishing. 1 in 3 Iraqi families today, 4.1 million children under the age of 16, are watching this channel. Even in Saudi Arabia, a very conservative Muslim country, 1 in 4 children are watching a Christian children's channel. Why? Because we have a unique message. We are often described by parents as a place where their kids are safe. They know they're not going to see somebody blow themselves up, a sudden act of violence. Their kids are not going to be exposed to messages about becoming a jihad, a martyr for the sake of Islam. They know they're going to be learning good lessons about interpersonal relationships and attitudes to other people, including members of their family. It is a trusted channel, and it's a very exciting opportunity. Sat7 is also a very cost-effective way of bringing change. We have a budget of $14 million, which is, in TV terms, not very much. It's the equivalent of producing two episodes of Friends. And we have about 14 million viewers. So for $1 a day, we're providing a whole year of television programming to a known viewer. And if you compare that to some of the other ways we're trying to bring about change in the Middle East, including the launching of, cruise missiles, and, this budget is less than a couple of cruise missiles for those of you that are buying these kind of things, devices, toys. So it is really an important thing to invest in, changing lives and attitudes for the future of the Middle East. I will close here and introduce Rita, who is the Executive Director for our Arabic channels, and she's going to just play you a video, I think, or at least tell you about specifically the women's program initiatives.
Good morning. It's so good to be with you today. Before I play the video, I would love a little bit to introduce myself. My name is Rita Al-Munayir, and I'm from Lebanon. A lot of times we think the backwardness and, especially in women's circle, it's because of Islam in the Arab world. And we forget about the culture. I mean, I'm a Christian. I was born in a Christian family. I lived all of my life in Lebanon. My dad put me in the best schools in town. I got the beautiful education, but still I faced and suffered with a lot of things that Muslim women also suffer from. So it's, yes, it's, like sometimes it's Islam, but also it's the culture. The culture, plays a big role in how we are raised and how we think and what we do. And still, it's a patriarchal culture that, like man is, like are first. And I was like really blessed and lucky that my dad was different. And I think you will hear also from Samia from Tunis, her family was different and her father is different. But it's still, culture till today plays a vital role in shaping women's role in the Arab world. I thought to share with you some statistics about what's, like the Arab world, but instead of like saying them, I will show you a video. I hope it's the right video. It's the first video that, yes, the Women of Hope video. This is like something that we have started recently in Sat 7, just to share with the Western women about, the Arab world. So let's see this video together and then we'll continue.
The Middle East and North Africa, home to over 500 million people, 160 million under the age of 16, 50% of whom are women and girls. In some Middle Eastern and North African countries, women are not free to drive a car, own property, conduct business, marry whom they choose, or even leave the house without a man's permission and presence. They are marginalized by government, culture, religion, and other circumstances beyond their control. Many of them become victims of abuse, even so-called honor killings, at the hands of their own family members. Many countries in the Middle East practice the horrific and unsanitary act of female genital mutilation, FGM, also known as female circumcision on young girls. FGM is defined as all procedures that involve partial or total removal of the external female genitalia or other injury to the female genital organs for non-medical reasons. It is cultural, so it is conducted by both Muslims and Christians. Often, this is due to poverty. In many Middle East and North African countries, poverty is 50% or more below the poverty line. Poverty leads to a lack of education. Prostitution and drug abuse is very high in Iran. As in many Middle Eastern countries, men use women for their own pleasure. Labor exploitation is the largest issue related to human trafficking in the Middle East, but the issue of sex trade has been growing in the last few decades. While it varies by country in the Middle East, women are often controlled by the men of their family. They are given as young girls in arranged and loveless marriages and are frequently victims of sexual exploitation. They are often beaten and treated as slaves. In addition to abuses and oppression specifically aimed at women, Christianity is also at risk. What can we do to help? Sat7 Women of Hope believes that increased exposure to the love of Jesus Christ will affect real change in the hearts of women and men across the region. As old attitudes, values, and ideas gradually move into alignment with the Word of God. Sat7 Women of Hope will be a voice for women in the Middle East and North Africa by raising awareness of their distress, sharing their stories, and asking for prayer on their behalf in Sat7 Women of Hope families, churches, and communities around the country. Join with us and join Sat7 Women of Hope today.
I just wanted to share this video with you so you will have like a little bit of feeling about women in the Arab world. But it's very important, you know, to just stress on the point that we cannot say this is the Arab woman because it differs from the country to another. So you can see like, you know, a country that is very open and like Tunis or Lebanon with education, and a lot of women can go to work and they have rights. But in other countries, maybe like Yemen or like to some extent Egypt, Morocco, or other countries, Saudi Arabia, you don't have these rights. So the Arab world differs from the country to another. But today I would like just to share with you something that I have studied, and this is my field, which is satellite television. And as you heard from Terry, that satellite television is very popular in the Arab world. And, you know, like women, a lot of times because they're staying at home and maybe they cannot go out to work, or maybe it's not safe to go out, like maybe what's happening in Iraq today, they just sit in front of a TV set and watch television. Television can play a vital role in women's life, you know, entertaining them and also educating them. But also, television can play a very negative role in the image of women in the Arab world. And I would like to share with you a recent study, not very recent, maybe like 8 years back, of soap operas on Egyptian television. It shows that most of these series, that, you know, all these soap operas, especially around Ramadan. Ramadan is this month of, you know, like fasting before the big Eid, the big, you know, like fitr, or I don't know what they call it in English, you know, where people break their, you know, like fasting and eat. They say that most of these series present violence against women as a positive thing. The survey made by an Egyptian women's organization and a private production company followed 18 television dramas shown on Egyptian national television during, you know, Ramadan. And these programs include scenes of violence against women. And they say the problem is that those who perpetuate the violence are the heroes of the episodes and are those who are closest to the hearts of the audience and hence have the largest impact on them. Most of the women in the programs played negative roles. The few women who were portrayed positively were shown as naive or harmless wives, lovers, or mothers. So, as Sat7, what about using satellite as a catalyst to improve the rights of women and standing for Arab women in the families and in society, advocating for greater justice for Arab women by altering the perception of women and women's roles in the family and beyond. And the objectives are to give voice to the Arab women and to impart to women a heightened sense of self-esteem, thereby improving their situation and helping them to play active and diversified roles in their society. In other words, we try in everything we produce to not just equip women in the Arab world to survive, but to succeed. And this is a key that if you look to the programs, you know, like Sat7 programs or other programs, you don't see it. This is the key of, I think, the success of our women's program. And if you know, like broadcast the dramas, like we broadcast dramas regarding like legal rights of women, you can see like, you know, the feedback of many women saying, oh, I didn't know that there is a different life that we can live. I didn't know that I have this, you know, right. I didn't know that other women would made it in their life, so I can make it too. And this is what we try all the time, you know, to put in our programs. And the programs differs that, you know, like you see on our screen today from, you know, like soap operas, but with a different message that you see on other television stations, to testimonies, and you will hear more, you know, from Samia, to talk shows. And maybe I will show you just a clip so you will know what kind of, you know, like program we put. This is because I talked about violence and media and how, you know, like violence against women was portrayed in other television station, Egyptians, you know, soap operas. I will show you a clip of what we put on Sat7 as, you know, like a counter effect of violence or counter programming for women. So let's see this clip together.
خلال مهنتك كمحامية شو أنواع العنف اللي أكثر إشي بتشوفيها موجودة في مجتمعنا؟
الحقيقة أنواع العنف متعددة. في العنف الجسدي، في العنف اللفظي، يعني حتى لو يتلفظ بمسبات أو يتلفظ بتهديد أو يتلفظ بأي كلمات تؤذيها أو بيعرف إنها تؤثر فيها، هذا يعتبر عنف. في العنف الاقتصادي، حرمانها من المصروف أو إعطائها مبالغ بسيطة، أو حتى بعض الأحيان بتكون الامرأة عاملة، مثلا هو بيستلم راتبها وبيعطيها من راتبها مبالغ معينة لمصروفها، مثلا بيحرمها من أي معلومات إنها تعرف عن وضع المنزل، دخل الأسرة، كيفية التصرف بدخل الأسرة. هذا يعتبر طبعا عنف موجه ضدها. في أنواع عديدة من العنف كمان. ممكن نعتبر أنه استعمال الغيرة لإفهامها أو إيهامها بأنه هو مش عنيف، لكن هو يستعمل الغيرة خوفا عليها، هو يستعمل الغيرة لمصلحتها، يعني كمان ممكن يستعملها كغطاء للعنف. في عندنا العنف بالإيحاء بالتهديد زي ما تفضل الدكتور، يعني في بعض المنازل فيها أسلحة خفيفة، هو لا يستعمل السلاح لكنه موجود، ممكن يحطه تحت المخدة، ممكن يحطه بالخزانة، يعني هو موجود في أرجاء المنزل، وهو ما بيستعمله مباشر، يعني اللي هو لا يشهر سلاحه ضدها، إلا إنه في أي مناقشة أو أي شيء هو بيشير له،
أو بالطلاق،
التهديد بالطلاق،
سلاح اللسان،
التهديد بالطلاق، التهديد بالحرمان، التهديد باستعمال الأطفال لحرمانها من الأطفال، يعني هي أساليب كثيرة، فموجود هاي كلها الشكل من أشكال العنف الموجه ضد المرأة.
كيف هذا العنف بيأثر في نفسية الزوجة؟
يعني آثار مختلفة، بلا شك أقلها أثرا هو الآثار الجسدية، يعني الآثار الجسدية إنها تتكسر، إنها مثلا تتجرح، إنها تصاب بحروق، إنها إلى آخره. أنا بعتبر إن دي يعني أقل الأشياء ضررا، لكن الضرر اللي بشوفه مدمر فعلا هو على النفس، تدمير النفسية وتدمير الشخصية ووضعها دائما تحت الشعور بالقهر الذي يبدأ بقتل كل ملكاتها وقتل مواهبها ودفن شخصيتها وعيشتها المستمرة تحت الشعور بالحرمان وبالظلم. أنا بعتبر أنه الآثار المدمرة على النفسية أقسى جدا من الآثار الجسدية.
And as you can see, we have like men also, like, you know, on the set when we have our, you know, like talk shows. And it's very interesting that a lot of, you know, like time men just call in and they want to participate, because we believe the power, you know, of media is not just on women, but also on men. It changed men. It changed their attitudes with women. Maybe also like it works in, you know, like in peoples who have the power to change society. And why we believe in media? Because with a literacy rate, especially among women in the Arab world, you don't need to use words. It's just pictures. So with, you know, like spots and with dramas and with another woman who's sharing her story, you can change a life of women today. Let me now introduce you to Samia. Samia, when I introduce her, I feel like so intimidated because she is not just a woman leader from a Muslim background, but also she finished her BA in biology, geography, now another BA in theology. She is a director. She is director, like film director. She's a camera woman. She's an editor. She's a musician. She is an on-screen talent, and she's taller than me. So that and she is like, I look, with amazement to her because she has a beautiful story to share about women in the Arab world and leadership of women in the Arab world. This is like a message of hope for many women, who lived there. So Samia, I'm gonna let you. Stand here and maybe, I don't know, just, share a little bit about your personal story, especially as a woman who lived in Tunis and in a Muslim family.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. My name is Samia. So I'm from Tunisia. Today I'm living in Algeria because my husband is from Algeria. So we're living in Algeria, serving in the media department, recording programs. Some of them are broadcasted on Sat7 today. So I want just to share a little bit about the difference between the value of women in Tunisia and in Algeria, because I was born and raised up in Tunisia. Then I moved to live in Algeria. So I can see the difference between if I can say, the role of women in Tunisia and then in Algeria. So Tunisia first is considered by the Europeans like a secular country, so where women can drive, women can even go to school without any problem. Then even she has rights the same as men. So women, if I can say, she's playing an active role in the society, which is not the case in Algeria. So Algeria, if you have a little bit small idea about Algeria, so it's like a big country, but where women and Islam is dominated as a religion. So women cannot drive in some cities, cannot drive, and can even not go out by herself. So it's not safe for security. For security reasons, she cannot go out by herself. So she has to stay at home. Many women cannot go out, even, as I mentioned, by themselves, but cannot go even to school. So which is like difficult.
Sama, tell me a little bit about, you born in a Muslim family, but then you chose, it's like it's our right to choose our religion, so but you chose to be Christian. How was the reaction? I mean, what happened? Tell me a little bit about this.
Yeah, if I can say how I heard about Jesus, maybe a little bit.
Sure.
It was like through Sat7. So the first time I heard about Jesus, it was through Sat7. So I'm thankful to God because I feel like I'm special because I was born in a Muslim country. So my father was he's very, if I can say, he's liberal. So for him, Islam is like the religion, and he wasn't practicing Islam, but for him the most important thing is to be smart in our studies, and this is the most important thing for him. And he was behind us all the time, so encouraging us. And
girls and boys, both girls and boys.
Much more girls, yeah, much more girls. So for him, you have to be successful in our life, because he knows about the society and about the vision of the society to women. So he wants his daughters to be smart, and I thank God for this. Yeah, so I heard about Jesus. It was through Sat7. So the first time I heard the message from Sat7, that I choose my way. So it was like I have to choose Yes, I know. I spent 20 years so in Islam. I saw many things, but for me, I have to choose my way, and I did, and I never regretted. So, and it was like my father. I never ever forget what my father said to me one first time he heard that I choose my way. So he said to me, "This is your responsibility in front of God. I encouraged you a lot. I love you so much, but you have to choose your way." And I'm thankful to God for this. Yeah.
So now what you do as a part of a leadership? You're a leader now. You lead church services and you're on the screen, you're a producer. So tell me a little bit about what you do for women, especially in Algeria.
So as I mentioned, so I heard the message or the good news on TV, so I choose to serve, in media. So because I know that media is playing a main role. So me and my husband were responsible in media department. So we're recording programs, especially testimonies with ladies, with women, much more with women, because we know. So if a woman give her testimony, so if the people, especially in Algeria or North Africa in general, because they can understand the language, some of the programs are subtitled into Arabic, so they can hear the message, so their life can change as my life is changed. So we're recording programs, testimonies, much more as I mentioned, with women. Then we had another program. It's for women too. So it's like a teaching program, discipleship program for the new believers. Then we record some other shots for children, especially.
And these testimonies, they're like testimonies of women, not just who became Christian, but also women that made it in life, that succeeded in life.
Yeah.
So tell me about this woman that was like sharing this particular story.
Yeah, one of the women. So we recorded her testimony. So she was like very zeal to give her testimony. So she said, "Please don't cut off any part from my testimony. I want my testimony to be a blessing for other women, because I know that women is suffering, not only in Algeria but in the whole of North Africa." So it was for us. It was like special, because for her she gave her testimony, and she mentioned many special, or if I can say special things, personal things, and she said, "No, I know that woman is suffering, so I want that this message or this testimony be a blessing for others too."
Thank you, Samia. But I just want to say, something. Yet, even though that her family was, open for her change of, path of life, if I want to say that, Samia, if she lives in Tunis today, well, let me ask her this question. If you live in Tunis today, will you do what you're doing, in Tunis?
Yeah. Yeah. If I'm living in Tunisia, I cannot do what I'm doing today, because I cannot let my face be shown on screen.
So she lives in Algeria. She let her face shown on screen, and many women like her, they want their faces shown on the screen because they believe that media can change, and if it changed my life, it can change the lives of many people. And this is a sample of many women in the Arab world. And each time when people say there is hope, yes, as long as we have people like this. Thank you very much. Thank you, Samia.
We're going to open it up for a time of questions, but if any of you doubt the power of media to change lives and attitudes, I'll just tell you one quick story from Egypt. And a respected doctor wrote to us and said, "You ruined my marriage. You have destroyed my marriage. You are responsible." Wow, that's a really good way for a Christian TV station. It's right, really good commendation. What had happened was, through a drama in which we dealt with violence against women, his wife had become aware of her rights not to be hit and beaten, and had gone to the police station to report her husband as being abusive. So this she only got through the television screen. And it's this kind of thing where you can present people with truth, with new models, new attitudes. It really does have an impact, especially in an oral culture like the Arab world today. We're happy to take questions now to any of us. And there aren't any.
Yeah, Terry, no, let me just step up here.
Okay.
We have microphones in the room. What I'd like for you to do is if you have a question, wait until the microphone arrives. Then I would like for you to introduce yourself to our guests. And if you're here representing an organization, I would like you to say what organization that is. So, Andrew, I think we have a question right over here in the second row.
Hi, thank you. Thank you. Really appreciated your presentations. I am Charlie Ponicelli, currently with the American Committees on Foreign Relations, and formerly the head of the International Women's Issues Office at the U.S. Department of State during the Bush administration. So I have followed many of these issues for a while. I want to ask you, because I think it was such an important message that religion is not always the cause of so much of this, it's culture. But to what degree would you say is culture often used as an excuse to perpetuate the bad practices? Because we know that culture has changed in many, if we could say, Islamic countries. It's changed in Afghanistan, it's changed in Iraq. Once women had been in one place, then they sunk very low, illiteracy rose. And also, another question to throw in terms of the power to change of the gospel and of faith, what about interfaith initiatives? Because there are great bonds often between Muslim women and Christian women.
Okay, we'll let each one of our panelists comment on those questions if they'd like to.
Well, I'll just answer with anecdotal, stuff, and maybe Terry can take it more, in depth. Regarding the first question, the perception a lot. Let's take this FGM. A lot of people think, and I hear this personally in a big debate, that it's Islamic thing, and they blame it on the Quran. And they didn't know that it's not. And the biggest, practice is in Ethiopia and Egypt. And in fact, Saudi Arabia has said that this is a stupid, silly, backward, practice that we will never do it. So this is what I mean, with culture. A lot of times, let's say I'm a Christian and, at church today, really I struggled, that to have a voice in my church. And this is, we think that, okay, we can, contribute as women, at church, or especially as born Christian, no, I couldn't play a role in my church. Yet, even when SAT 7, and Terry is here, he can comment. When I had, the first time they put me, as a director, not a lot of people were happy with that. And especially if man reports to me. So maybe I'm talking about superficial issues here. Even with beating or smacking, or maybe beating, it's really you can find a lot of, Christian men beat their wives until today. And if a man cheats on their wife, Christian or Muslim, this is a part of being a man, the manhood. But if the wife cheats, it's adultery, and it's banned in the society. And if you look back 3 or 4 years ago, Egypt, they give the women the right to ask for divorce. It was not like this before. But of course, yes, there's a lot of things that we can blame, religions, because I think, when Islam was formed and they did few, positive things, into their society, but they stopped there. They never, how do we say, evolved, thank you, with the years. They stopped there and they didn't, go further than this. So that's why I feel sometimes, or this is when I speak with, people who didn't, live in the region, that yes, there are a lot of things, that we shouldn't take them as excuse, say it's culture, not religion. No, if you read in the Quran, and then maybe Samia can read this verse, like that she was preparing today regarding marriage and wife beating, and that this is, you don't see in the Bible, and like God has gave us, like we're more precious than pearls, like the name of the program, but still we suffer with like a culture that maybe it will change. And this is, I think, the role of, the programs that we produce today to make, a positive role in this culture. Terry, I don't know if you want to say anything regarding this.
I think we're in a very privileged position because Christianity, of course, was birthed in the culture of the Middle East. And yes, of course, that culture has changed over time, but Christianity was contextualized in the Middle East, and that's a whole lecture in itself. But and we have a staff of Christians from the Middle East, and there are many good things in Middle Eastern culture: hospitality, family values, and so on. And we don't want to lose any of that. But there are things that we need to challenge. And who's the best people to challenge that? It's Arab Christians who are bringing the gospel to bear on their own culture. Now, of course, you could argue they don't, because they were brought up in this culture, they don't see the problems with it. But they have been confronted. The Middle East has been confronted with new ideas from all over the place. And there is a lot of questioning going on, whether it's political or moral or religious or ethical. And so people are re-examining themselves. We are in a privileged position. We're not trying to take a Christian message and a Christian set of values and culture into another culture. We are working in the homegrown environment of Christianity, and it's exciting. It's exciting to see the gospel at work as salt and light in that society.
Did you want to add anything?
If I can just read the verse in Quran, as Rita mentioned, this is written in Quran in Surah 4:3. It says, "And if you be apprehensive that you will not be able to do justice to the orphans, you may marry 2 or 3 or 4 women whom you choose. But if you apprehend that you might be not able to justice to them, then marry only one wife, or marry those who have fallen in your possessions."
So this is like an example, like, religion, yes, as you said, but there are also cultural things.
But I think the point that you're all three making with respect to the work that you're now doing is impressing on people, both from a cultural standpoint and from a faith standpoint, the value of each individual, and that you should not do injustice or harm to any individual.
And of course, this concept of women being second-class citizens is only one step removed from Christians being second-class citizens, and these people from a Bedouin background or Nubian background being second-class citizens. So, as you address human rights issues across the board, it's like the tide that lifts all the boats, and it's very important that we as Christian media really focus on the big picture and not sort of try to defend Christian rights singularly.
Yes.
But try to see where the real issue is, and the real issue is this fundamental lack of respect for difference. And unless we deal with that, there will not be a future place for Christians or other ethnic or religious minorities in the Middle East of tomorrow.
Okay, I have a question here in the front row, and then we'll move around the room.
Hello, my name is Dorothy Taft, and I am with the Tintalin Group, consulting group. Thank you for your presentations. Can you give us a little insight into your programming to instill respect among boys and girls in your kids' programming? Do you use heroes? What from your culture do you use to instill respect at a young age for each of the sexes?
Well, this is the best thing that I heard today, because I have a passion for kids programs. This is how I started in Set 7 17 years ago as a producer for children programs and on-screen talent. The beauty in all this that We have more than maybe 50% of our kids' programs produced, you know, in the Middle East. Why I say 50, maybe in the Arabic channel we have 70 or 80 produced in the Middle East. 50 because we use a lot of cartoons. You know, children love cartoons, so we acquire, you know, like programs from the West, we subtitle them into Arabic or we dub them into Arabic, so, you know, children can follow and can write to us. And also, yes, we promote heroes. I mean, in other words, not heroes, but like on-screen talents that can relate to the children. So we have live, you know, like programs where children can phone in and just talk to the presenter, sing with the presenter, pray with the presenter, and have fun. And this is like really exciting because you can see how children, not just, you know, watching the television by themselves, but bringing the whole family to watch. So you're not changing the lives and the hearts of these, you know, young toddlers, but you're changing, you know, the hearts of their mothers and their fathers and their uncles and grandma and grandpa and sometimes the neighbors. Because, you know, television is like there in the living room and everybody, you know, like come sit and watch, you know, television. And I think what we really, you know, like not because, you know, I'm SAT7, maybe I'm biased a bit, but, you know, we have beautiful programs that a lot of television stations sometimes ask, you know, to have our music videos, you know, like our dramas and the idea of, you know, like life, you know, that they see on our screen.
Okay, very good. I see a lady here in the back of the first section.
Thank you. My name is Kim Weichel, and I head an international women's peacebuilding organization. And I'd like to offer a different perspective as well. I've been in the United Arab Emirates and Qatar several times. Women there have stepped into leadership. They're heading companies. They're heading ministries in the government. 75% of all graduates in universities in the UAE are women. Women are on the rise, and really it's a very different picture there. I participated in a Women in Leadership conference in early June in Dubai. There were women from all over the region, and I was really blown away with how far women have gone in stepping into leadership. Granted, there's still a lot of challenges, but I don't want to just paint a picture that all women are victims and that it's a challenge, although Rita, you said it varies in different countries. But I would appreciate your perspective because I think this is a perspective that needs to be highlighted. We don't see this as much in the West. There's a lot going on. In fact, I really feel that women are going to be helping to lead change in some of the countries that at least that I've just mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, this is true, but if you look at some of the UN indices on gender inequality, there are shocking differences between these Arab countries and, say, Sweden or Denmark. I mean, huge, huge differences. And while there are many that are kind of escaping in the hundreds or thousands, there are still millions that don't break out of that bondage, if you like, of the stereotypes and the expectations that a patriarchal environment have upon women and so on. And there's these hidden issues, you know, like the gender-based abortion that lead to the abortion of girls more than boys in the region and so on. There's a lot of work to be done. I mean, there are these buds of hope, these kind of shoots that are very encouraging, but it's, you know, it's somewhat of a, what should I say, rarefied atmosphere they work in. There's still a huge incumbent set of attitudes that we've got to address, and there are a lot of women that don't have these opportunities to rise. I mean, you can point to Egyptian TV. You know, the director of programming there was a woman. I don't think she still is. I think she kind of got discredited in the last regime. But women do have a role and have had a role for a long time in Egypt. But that doesn't go out into the rural areas. Once you step outside the television and the university, the television building and a few other elite kind of business environments, you suddenly find yourself back in the Stone Age. So, but it's encouraging that it's happening at all, and there are pressures and there are movements and there is hope.
Okay, I see. Did I see a question here? Yes.
Hi, Charlotte Florence, the Heritage Foundation. I I think I was struck by, Samia and Rita, your story, both of your stories about your fathers and their influential, I think, role in kind of opening up opportunities for you, or allowing you to pursue certain things. And I recently was at an event with Malala from Pakistan, and I think, again, that story was her father was supporting her and kind of what she's endeavoring to do from this point forward. So I think, how is it that SAT TV kind of addresses kind of beyond just women's empowerment, but the men, fathers, young boys in women's lives to help support them?
Well, as you have seen in the one sample of the talk show that we just took it from YouTube, we're always having a man around just to share their point of view and create a debate. We love debates. Sometimes it doesn't work, so you can see that people are angry with each other. But we try to create a debate, just bringing the positive and negative. And this is what we try to do in all our programs, saying this is the positive, this is the negative. And plus, we are trying now to produce programs for men. I mean, men, especially when they come at the end maybe of the day, they want to watch football or whatever. But we're trying, a lot of times to promote these programs on our social media, so to address issues that men struggle with. And I think we are really, and this is also anecdotal, we are really impressed when a women's program, a program called Thread and Needle, you have it's a women program, or More Precious Than Pearls, but still men are responding more than women, and the response is positive. And I remember one time it was, the subject was about abuse. And you see one man saying, I am apologizing on behalf of all the men, in the Arab world, on my knees in front of you, because she was telling her testimony as an abused woman and telling you, please forgive us. So this is really powerful, not just for the man and the woman who just heard, please, the apology, but also for maybe millions of potential men watching and seeing, okay, we really did a great harm to this woman, and still one man stood up and asked for forgiveness. So we're trying.
Okay, I see a question here in the front row.
Need to stand?
Yes, and introduce yourself, please.
Dave Onsbach, just on my own. A little controversial question. Are you a Christian, believe in a more literal interpretation of the Bible? Because the Bible says that a woman's supposed to submit to her husband and male leaders in the church and that kind of thing. So I know you strongly support the women's rights and that. So do you and if Christians were to get into Arab Christians were to get into power, would you still support the pluralism that you do now and not replace Islamic Sharia with Christian Sharia?
I think we got it. Okay.
Well, we're not literalists, certainly in that sense, and we certainly don't anticipate the Christians taking over the Middle East quite soon. And even if they did, I think they've demonstrated a pluralistic approach, and certainly that's what we've been arguing for through programming. I think a lot of questions have been raised, and the truth is that we have a huge variety of programming over 4 channels, ranging from cartoons and songs and call-in programs, discussion programs, help me here, films, drama, kids programs of all kinds, church services, yeah. And there's all kinds of things go on in each program. There's the main subject that you're discussing, and then there's the way in which you discuss the subject, and who is around the table discussing the subject. And all of these things carry subliminal messaging about the value of a woman's opinion or other issues. And so given, the power of television is that, it's there every day in your house, and you've got this huge challenge in front of you across the Middle East and North Africa when it comes to some of these issues, whether it's attitude to Christians, whether it's attitude to minorities, whether it's attitudes to women, or education for girls, or whatever it is. But there are so many ways in which these can be dealt with day by day. And the power of what we're doing, I think, is this drip feeding. Every day people get a new perspective on a new issue from a new person. And having won the trust of so many viewers, it's easier. And we are seeing these changes take place. Sometimes you don't hear from a viewer for 10 years, and they'll suddenly call you out of the blue and say, you know, I've been watching you for the last 10 years, and I want to thank you for this or that, or this is how it's changed my life. It takes time. You don't change an environment like that, especially when you look at all the complexities and differences across the Arab world overnight. And that's just to say that, you know, we are dealing with many of these things through multiple ways, didactically head-on and subliminally through role models that females have on screen.
Okay, I have a question here in the front row.
Thank you. My name is Yuri Lee. I'm from Maureen Mike Mansfield Foundation. And I have a question about the satellite program, the satellite. I heard that, is there any possibility the programs you're going to plan and make is banned by government or by a meticulous censorship? Because I think when they think, I think there is a potential dangerous messages to change the world and to change their society. So I think government might meticulously censor the programs and ban it. So how are you going to get through it and overcome that? Thank you.
Thank you.
It's very difficult to jam satellite television. It's not like jamming terrestrial radio, for example, or even terrestrial television. You can't just set up an interference pattern. You have to uplink interference to the satellite. And that satellite is owned by European Consortium of Telecoms or a government. And you're going to interfere not just with one channel, you're going to wipe out a whole bouquet of channels on that transponder. So jamming has only been undertaken by the Iranian and the Turkish and the Syrian and the Libyan governments at different times, at the end of which they've had their wrists slapped. In the case of one telecom, well, Iran, for example, they've been doing the jamming most recently because they've got nothing to lose. All their telecommunication services have been taken off Eutelsat as part of the sanctions against Iran. So they've got nothing to lose by interfering with other people's channels. And we sometimes have had interference because we share a transponder with Al Jazeera, and that's been the target of the jamming or other things. But it lasts for a limited number. The best way, and I probably shouldn't say this while the cameras are rolling, the best way to kind of put us out of business is to knock out our local production centers in Egypt or Beirut or Istanbul, or, you know, to harass the people that appear on screen. But technically, it's very difficult to jam our satellite transmissions.
Very good. All right. I see a question here in the front row, and I see you too, so we'll get to you next.
Hi, I was delighted to hear your presentation. It's very inspiring. My name is Gretchen Newts, and I'm here independently. And I was thinking about the power of language as you were talking and showing the clip from the talk show, and I was wondering if you could comment on how you have navigated or negotiated between the different languages, even within Arabic, shall we say. So I know that having been in the Middle East, Fusha, or modern standard Arabic, has a lot of power as sort of a language of culture and thought, but there are many women who have difficulty understanding it because they haven't received education. So when do you use Fusha, and when do you use different dialects?
I'm educated. I have still problems with Fusha. Because it's really a very difficult, Arabic is a very difficult language, yes. But, you know, with the invasion of a satellite, since I think, was it 91, 92, people now are more exposed to other dialect in the Arab world. So they can, like, watch Egyptian television, Moroccan television, Algerian television, Jordanian television. So they are used to these, different dialects. We don't use Fusha on our screen. We just use it when we read the gospel, because this is our Arabic. This is the language, or the written Arabic is Fusha, and it's the language of the Bible. But with all our, programs, when Egyptian, is producing Egyptian program, they speak Egyptian. Egyptian is like a Hollywood of the Arab world, so almost every country can watch, and understand Egyptian dialect. But when a Lebanese or Moroccan or Tunisian or, speak the Arabic language, we always have in mind that a lot of people cannot understand us. So we are a bit slow when we speak, and we don't use very, slang or, words that are misunderstood. And literally, the first few years, we had problems, when we used some words that misunderstood in other, countries, and they were a bit, surprised or shocked, of our. And we developed also a kind of dictionary. I don't think we're using it now because we're more experts, about some words that how they are received in this country and another country. Now, regarding the programs that Samia produced, they are in Kabili. Yes, can you tell their Kabili, difference of Kabili and Arabic?
Some of our programs are recorded in Kabili language, which is spoken in the whole North Africa. I think even from Egypt to Mauritania, back to Mali. So we record the programs on Kabili language or Berber language. And we choose to put the subtitles into Arabic. So the classic one. So it could be for the whole North Africa. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Okay, we have a question right here.
Hi, I'm Allie Lane, intern here at the Heritage Foundation. My question is regarding how you set the tone of your programs to promote dignity or religious freedom without promoting what's usually lumped in with this idea of freedom, which is the ability to do anything you want. Basically, the distinction I'm making is between religious liberty and promoting atheism or secularism, or promoting the ability to appear on screen, on TV, versus the ability to pose for obscene pictures, which I'm sure you're obviously not promoting. But how do you draw that distinction so that someone who sees it from the outside knows what you're promoting and knows what you're not promoting?
While you're thinking about that, I'll just say there's a huge difference in the perception of what freedom means. I remember when George Bush was standing up talking about, we stand for freedom. Well, what he was saying to the Arab world was, we stand for exactly this, the freedom to be immoral and to do what you like. And of course, we're communicating like that, the Arab world and the West, over this issue of what freedom really means. Personal freedoms have to be coupled with personal responsibility. And this has been an emphasis in the Arab world, and this is why some Arab governments cannot embrace some of the statements on freedom, because of the lack of definitions here. But when it comes to freedom of thought and freedom of religion and freedom to practice that without offending or interfering with other people, of course, an apostate is an offense to other people and always will be an offense to some people. How do we find our way here? And freedom of women is another huge issue. We try to avoid this negative aspect of freedom, that is the freedom to indulge yourself and be selfish, and balance it with the freedom that's coupled with human responsibility for other people. That's just a general introduction.
But also, this is where I will go back to the culture. Even if we talk about freedom, either a Muslim or a Christian, we have boundaries with our freedom that the culture dictates us to have. So I cannot like say, like when I hear Terry saying indulgence, we don't have this, because we have like certain cultural and like moral standards, especially cultural, that that brings shame, especially in the life of women's, that plays a vital role in how we see others and we see ourselves. But when we try, like, maybe we go back to the question that is your second questions, we want, with all the programs that we produce, to tell people that we have the right to choose, as women or as an individual. I have the right, like to think differently than you think, and we still can live, opposite each other and be friends. And this is what we do in our programs. We have lots of sheikhs coming to our current affairs, and then we open a debate. And if I am different than you, it doesn't mean that we should be enemies. You can have your, like opinion, I can have mine. And I can accept you, accept the others, and this is what we try in our policy in programming. We can accept the others, even though the others are different than me. And this is, I think, where the Arab world, it's a big challenge, for them. And I give you like just one example. Sometimes, in meetings, we're Arabs and, Westerners, and this is just very small example so you'll know our mentality. Maybe like the Westerners, like debate in the meeting, and they quarrel and they shout at each other. And then the meeting finished and you see them like hugging and now let's go for lunch. It's very normal. But for us as Arabs, I will shout at someone and, like after that, like eating with them, he's my enemy. I will not accept them. I cannot talk to them. It's become personal. And this is where we're, trying to play. It's maybe like, very naive, like interpretation of democracy, that we're different, but let's, live together in harmony. She wants to be, like a Christian, and you want to be a Muslim. It's your own, like responsibility, as her dad said, in front of God. So this is what we try with all the programs we produce.
Well, listen, I think we're going to have to wrap up today. I know there are more questions, more interest. I must say on that last point, Reed, I feel like I must have a little Arab in me. Those of you who know me might get that. Listen, let me just say, the Heritage Foundation is a public policy institute. We're nonpartisan. We work with people from all over the political map and all over the world. We do think individual freedom is important, valuable, and that people are our most important, valuable, and precious resource. We support religious freedom. And one of the points that Terry made in his presentation was the lack of employment creating some of the challenges in the Middle East. And, of course, the Heritage Foundation has now for almost 20 years produced the Index of Economic Freedom, which anyone can go to online and see what some of the elements are that are missing in some of these Middle Eastern countries that have actually led to high unemployment, which has resulted in some of the very destructive circumstances there. So we are delighted to have had the opportunity to host the SAT-7 team here today. I think you can see that what they're doing without government taxpayer dollars, but with donations from individuals who really care about people in that part of the world, is making a difference, and it's making a difference one life at a time, and that's why it's so very important. So thank you very much for being here today and for this presentation. And thank you all for attending.